I'm Justin Young, and he is Josh Tech, and this is the Shot Clock, Georgia's high school basketball podcast, right here on YouTube on HoopSeen TV. Make sure you like and subscribe this video, and subscribe to our channel while you're at it, so you can follow along as we go along and talking about all kinds of basketball right here in the Peach State. Josh, what's up, man?
Man, just recovering from a busy MLK weekend. There's all kind. MLK weekend brings all kinds of basketball to the Atlanta area, and there's events going on in every pocket of the city, right? Any kind of county, any kind of sub city, whatever. There's basketball going on, so I'm kind of recovering from trying to take as much of that in as possible.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It usually means some good matchups, a good opportunity to see some players that maybe we don't get a chance to see. I actually have enjoyed that over the years of seeing the different types of matchups, because we're also in that part of the calendar too, where you got really the crucial weeks are right now, right? The next 2 weeks as we get ready for the region tournament. And so this was like the last time teams can play somebody out of their region as they kind of get ready for state and region tournament time too. So I'm sure you learned a lot of stuff along the way. We're going to talk a lot about all of those events that you went to. You went to a number of events over the weekend in the Metro Atlanta area. We're also going to talk about Ace Bailey, a major commitment at Rutgers over the weekend. I've got to look at my notes. Some major teams that are still undefeated as we get, really towards the back end of the regular season there in the state of Georgia. Some commitments, some guys that really kind of play their way into the conversation. And, of course, what's coming up this week in the state of Georgia. So let's get right to it, Josh. The main thing, there's a lot to kind of probably sift through over the weekend. But when we look at it, I think Akai Fleming, I always know like where our show is going to go based on the excitement level of your text messages that come to me over the weekend. And I could sense that with you from Akai Fleming. Tell us a little bit about him and why you're so excited about him.
Yeah, I think when we move past this weekend, I think that what I'll remember the most from MLK weekend in 2023 in a basketball sense is Akai Fleming's performance on Saturday at the Peach Ball Classic. He exploded for 29 points, and 18 of those came in the fourth quarter against Mount Pisgah, and he was just phenomenal. He's a 6'4" guard, 6'4" sophomore guard out of Osborne High School, and he does a ton well. Like, he's a really good shooter, can create space for himself to get those shots off, scores from multiple levels. He's long. He's like, if you saw him, you'd be like, oh yeah, I like that guy, because he's a big guard and he's a big long guard, and that's a JY kind of trait. And he really impacts the game on multiple levels defensively. He can guard multiple positions, good rebounder. So he just checks a ton of boxes. And on this one, he didn't get going until late. Early in the game, I was like, oh, okay, we're getting a slow Akai Fleming game. That's all. It's all good. Whatever. It happens. And then in the second half, he just popped, and it was ridiculous. He was putting on a show. Like, it kind of got to that point where it was just like, it was theater more than basketball. He had, all kinds of guys with hands in his face. He was just hitting shots over him and all kinds of stuff. He was really, really fun to watch. And for me, I think, we have him in our national 2025 rankings. 24/7 Sports has them in their national 2025 rankings. And it's this kind of performance that he's going to put on with the Atlanta Celtics on the Adidas circuit that's going to make him pop. And I think, everybody else is going to catch up and put them in their, national whatever rankings. Sure. And I think college coaches are really going to flock to him.
The 18 points in the second half is the kind of guy like that I'm really interested in. Like, people always ask me, like, well, what do you look for like in a player? Well, I'm really big on guys that thrive in the second half of their season, right? When the new year hits, when January hits, like, who's playing really well down the stretch, who plays really, really well in the clutch, right? Second half performances, particularly fourth quarter or late game situations. Like, to me, like, those are the guys. Like, I talk to my brother about this all the time with the NBA, and he's like, you just have to have a dude. And if you look at the NBA this year, I mean, it's every night there's something like Jason Tatum last night, or even, like LeBron last night, late game against Houston. But you have to have a dude to really close it out. For me, I think going into this season, like, that's kind of my bias this year, or who are guys that are in the clutch in those late game situations that are going to take the game over. And so to be a big guard, you're right. Like, that is, for me, that is the type of flavor that I want to have in the ice cream parlor, right? Yep. That's my favorite. I don't think about the other 30,
Exactly. Well, and to go back to your point about, in the clutch and all of that, he really did lead like a double-digit deficit comeback. I mean, while Osborne didn't win the game, Mount Pisgah is a really good team, and they ended up winning the game. Akai Fleming taking over for Osborne was necessary because they were down, relatively significantly, and he really brought them back and put a scare into Mount Pisgah, and it was all because of his efforts late in the game. And then to go back to your point about big guards or whatever, he could he's got the frame of a guy who's still growing, right? You kind of see that long, lanky, big feet, all those attributes, kind of skinny still, and you think like, oh, this guy might still have some growing left in the tank. So while he's a 6'4" guard now, he could end up being 6'6" guard. He could end up being more of the 2-3 hybrid kind of guy. So there's just a lot left with Akai Fleming in his development in that regard.
I love that. This is, again, as a prospect in their development cycle, right? Like where they're at to really become a player. To me, that sophomore year, that second semester is really where you figure out this is a dude or this is a guy. Like that's the point where your potential needs to start to tap into your production. And so for me, like this is the most critical time. January, February, early March, right before we get into the live periods in April. This is where I think you learn a lot. So I'm glad that we've got him on our national rankings, and he'll be getting a boost also in those 2025 rankings. So
one more thing on this, I saw them on Saturday, and I didn't see them on Monday, but I through the internet and all that, you can keep up with any kind of game. I saw they had another 20-point game on Monday for Osborne. So he's really rounding into form at the right time. Like you kind of keep saying, like, 29 points followed up with 20 points. Yeah, I'll take that all day long.
Consistent. You got to be consistent. No question about it. No question about it. Speaking of consistency, there is a name that, I always love keeping an eye, and we do too. We don't really like to kind of gas up young guys, freshmen, but we also don't want to ignore great freshman prospects, right? And we've got one at the Walker School in Moustapha Diop, who really, it seems like every time you write about him, I get the sense that you feel that same way that we talked about with Fleming, that it just keeps getting better and better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's hard not to be enamored with what this guy brings to the floor. He's 6'9" long, really mobile too, really fluid kind of game. He's got a lot of the skill areas down for being a big guy, who's newer to the country, who's, as young as he is. He has a lot of, he's really advanced in the skill departments. He can shoot it a little bit. He can put the ball on the floor. When he gets to the free throw line, it's not like hack a Shaq. He's a real threat from the 3-point line. He does a lot of really good things when it comes to, like turnaround jumpers and all of that around, like on the block and stuff like that. So he's got a really good foundation to build on, and he's averaging a double-double for Walker right now. And he, kind of continued that with 18 points, 12 rebounds, and 7 blocks on MLK Day over at Holy Innocents in the Walker School's win over Southwest Atlanta Christian. So he had a really good game for them in that one.
And the Walker School, I loved going to games there. It's a great gym. It's small. It's intimate. I saw so many great games from like Malik Beasley and Kaiser Gates and Kobe Simmons, because I was also there to see Robert Baker, who's now, I think, doing pretty well in the G League. Fun story from him. He went to Harvard, didn't work in the league office, and now is getting a shot in the G League. Probably the last real big guy they had, even though he was probably more of a wing and a guard. With Diop, what is it about him? Like, what makes him unique comparative to other guys, other than his size as a freshman?
Well, it's his size and his skill set that combine, right? Like, when you're young, you kind of expect to see awkward moments from a guy, and you don't really see that as much with Diop. He does have his freshman moments where he'll get the ball, and he'll be a little bit indecisive with his next move, right? But that's because of youth. But he really does a good job, like shooting the ball and all that kind of stuff. When he's given space, at this level, when you have a 6'9" guy, you're just gonna throw all the bodies at him, right? But when he's given space, he can put the ball on the floor and kind of create for himself away from the basket. So I'm really impressed with him in that regard. And like I said, shooting, he's not like a Diop, go stand on the 3-point line and just jack up shots, but you can run a play for him, and he's reliable for a 3 or 2 a game. So I'm really impressed with him in that regard as well. And he's really adaptable, right? So one thing that I was really impressed with Diop is that I caught a little bit of his background. He was originally from Senegal. He spent some time in Spain, and he speaks 4 languages. So that means he can kind of really adapt to his settings, right? Like a young guy that got all that under his belt already. He's been through a lot. He's done a lot. So I think as he adjusts to the game here, he'll be really be able to fit in well with the American game.
Give me 2 other freshmen that you're impressed by off the top of your head out of the Peach State.
Manny Green at Cedar Grove, that guy has like a college-ready body already. He looks more like a college freshman than he does a high school freshman. He's like 6'5" and really strong. He's been really, really great for Cedar Grove. And then, Caden Allen over at Grayson, it's tough to get into that Grayson lineup because they have a lot of upperclassmen. They have a lot of guys who have been through that system. But for him to be able to get minutes, consistent minutes, and to be able to contribute in those minutes, that's been really impressive. I think he's going to be a guy that really takes steps forward once the spotlight shines on him more.
If you're watching this, we appreciate you doing so. Drop a comment below about who some of the top freshmen that we need to keep our eyes on from the state of
Please
Georgia.
do. I've been trying to find some more. It's just hard right now because a lot of them aren't playing as much, or some of them are playing at smaller schools. So that's an area that I'm trying to kind of dig into a little bit.
Well, we really get into the film, and I think when region tournaments come along, I still, even out here in Arizona, I pull up the computer, I watch about 6 games, 7, 8 games a day, trying to watch as much as we can. So seriously, if you've got a freshman or a sophomore that really plays a huge role on a team as a starter, as a all region level guy, let us know. Put his name in the comments below so we can keep our eyes on him and make sure we get some eyes on some film, or even Josh and some of our other staff to get out some of these region tournaments. So make sure you do that. And while you're there, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Of course, got to do that as we go through and post some more videos coming up here into the postseason. So, Josh, let's keep it moving here on the shot clock. Big news over the weekend, really, I think caught a lot of people by surprise, and that's Ace Bailey going to Rutgers. The 5-star top 6 guy in the class of 2024 commits to Rutgers, is the highest player ever to commit to Rutgers. Massive news. Just 2 weeks ago, the guy put out like his top 12 list. So I don't know how you go from 12 to 1 in a matter of 14 days, but here we are. And suffice it to say, massive news, man. Massive news.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was surprising, right? It kind of leaked out in a non-traditional way. Normally you have a kid of that caliber, especially, kind of announce his commitment date.
Yeah.
And then you kind of go through the whole, we saw with Ian Jackson, who committed to North Carolina. He committed on ESPN during halftime at the Hoop Hall. So he kind of had a grandiose stage. With Ace Bailey, it kind of leaked out, and then it kind of went like, you and I were texting. It was kind of like, well, he hasn't announced it. McEachern hasn't announced it. So I don't know if this is like real or not. It's kind of that deal. But then more details kind of came out. He was on a visit to Rutgers when he announced. So that makes sense, right? And he was at a game where they beat Ohio State, and then so he committed on the spot there. So now it all kind of fits together. That's why it leaked out from someone, from that area, kind of spread it a little bit. And yeah, this is a big time get for Steve Pikiell. It's the highest rated recruit in school history. He's one of the most talented players in his class. And, it's really interesting to me because 2023 McEachern player JaMychal Davis, McEachern point guard, committed to Rutgers. Ace Bailey commits to Rutgers. And then now all eyes kind of turn to Moses Hips, 2024 guard, really shoots the ball well. He plays at McEachern. He's from up in that Philly, New Jersey area, and he also has an offer from Rutgers. So it'd be interesting to see if we get Powder Springs North going on up there in Piscataway.
It's funny, a little rewind. So when the June live period changed and it was opened up for college coaches, you remember I think the very first one was over there at McEachern, the GBCA event. And I remember walking into their multi-court facility. It's really dark. It's got those kind of rubber floors. I actually really like games over there. I thought my favorite place to go watch games. But I remember walking in, and I remember running into Brandon Knight at Rutgers, like literally like kind of bumped into him, right? I caught him on a blindside screen. And I remember thinking like, man, that's so crazy. Like Rutgers is down here. They've been laying the foundation for this type of recruitment to start to happen, them coming down in here into the city of Atlanta and start to recruit the area and really pulling some guys. So, a lot of times these things don't happen overnight. They take time. I know that there's a lot of connections to the Northeast with the AOT program, which we know is very close to the McEachern program. So a lot of tie-ins there. But let's talk about Ace Bailey for a second as a player.
Yep.
We've talked about it before on the show and offline as well that, there are times where long-term we have a hard time with this 24. Well, I shouldn't say we have a hard time. This 2024 class hasn't really kind of set the narrative in permanent ink yet, right? As far as what the pecking order looks like. And I remember when I went out there to Atlanta last year, again, talking about these region tournaments, the very first guy that I wanted to go see was Ace Bailey. And they played over there at Campbell in the region tournament. And the first time that I had a chance to see him with my own, well, no, that's not true. I saw him at the tip-off. Nevertheless, I wanted to see him when I came back home to Atlanta, and I was like, holy crap. Like this dude right here is no joke. And like I'm pulling out like old days of, Al Farouk Aminu and like all those guys, Chris Singleton, and quite frankly, I think Ace Bailey long term could be better than those guys. And that's not to discount those guys, right? Because they've had great careers in their own accord. But Ace Bailey has those tools to me that when we really watch this 2024 class nationally, I think you've got to consider him. I mean, he is number 6 overall, for goodness sakes, in our current rankings, but he has the potential to be a number 1 guy. Let me ask you this. What does he not do now that he could do down the road, which will allow for that type of jump? Like, where does he have to grow his game the most?
That's tough. That's a really tough one because he does so much well. I think it's kind of just building his resume, right? Winning some more of those head-to-head matchups against light competition. Like in Georgia, he's one of the most talented players here. So what I want to see Ace do is over the summer with AOT or individually at some of these, big-time camps is just go out and kind of play everybody and just keep building that resume, because to me that's all there is. I mean, right now he's dominating competition, but I want to see him go up against I want to see what he looks like against like a Flory Badunga or something like that, like a guy that we hold really high in that same class. Like, and that's just it. It's just building resume. It's just building Ace Bailey won this matchup at this camp. Ace Bailey won this matchup at, this AAU event or something like that. And it's just, that just comes with more spotlight being on the 2024 class, this spring and summer.
I think there's a deeper recruiting's interesting too, right? Like we've talked about it last week on the show on talking about the Calipari situation at Kentucky, and then they go and get a huge win at Tennessee. You see North Carolina adding 2 top 10 guys out of the 2024 class, despite the year that they're having. So North Carolina's kind of making a surge a little bit in the not surge, they're always good, but you don't see there's this shift, right? And we've seen this over the course of time where Jabari Smith goes to Auburn and all the great players that are at Arkansas and all these players that are kind of taking a non-traditional blue blood path where they're not going to the Dukes and the Kentuckys and, Michigan States and Kansas. Now all those schools are getting them, UCLA, but we're seeing these other programs, and Rutgers now throws their hat to the ring and gets a player that you can go after and that you can get, and you can, be a contender right out of the gate. I mean, the rack is going to be absolute rocking with a guy like Ace Bailey. So I think it really goes to what's that?
That place is already rocking. As soon as Ace gets on the floor and he throws down his first high flying dunk, or he does some kind of crazy dribble step back 3 or something like that, that place is going to go bananas.
It's going to go crazy. And their fan section is so great. Like just even the engagement on social media. Like it's funny. We talked about it before where certain fan bases, we could put out some big breaking news or, like a hot take, and it just kind of goes whatever. I mean, with Rutgers, holy crap. I didn't realize Rutgers was so hard, man.
Yeah, man, they're it's a sneaky good basketball program right now. A lot of people still kind of have that mentality of, oh, Rutgers, they suck, but they're bringing a lot of value to the Big Ten, and I think right now they're like in the top 15 on KenPom and stuff like that. That's a good program that Steve Pikiell's built.
Yeah, no question about it. Well, obviously we love it. We're certainly biased because we see him quite a bit, but it's a significant commitment, significant for Ace Bailey, significant for Rutgers, and significant in the big picture of recruiting for the 2024 class. I'm sure we're going to talk about his commitment and decision to go there quite a bit over the next couple of years. Let's keep it moving. Eagles Landing, they haven't lost all season. It seems like every week we have the show, we've got to have an Eagles Landing section. They're just killing people.
Yeah. Honestly, it's just line them up, knock them down for Eagles Landing. They're now 19-0 after they beat Green Forest at the Campbell Martin Luther King Dream event over there, hosted by Campbell High School. In that headlining matchup against Green Forest, they ended up winning that one, improving them to 19-0. Now, when you look at Eagles Landing's remaining schedule, they have 5 games in the regular season, all against region opponents, all of whom they've already beaten. So there's a real reasonable chance that we could look up going into the postseason and have Eagles Landing being 24-0. I think that's one of the continuing developing stories in Georgia. I think that's towards the top of the list of Georgia stories right now.
That's interesting. I used to run the power poll, really like the all-encompassing, throw the classifications out the window, and I did it for a long time. And I feel like Eagles Landing every single year around this time, mid-January, we're always undefeated. Only had 1 loss on the calendar, and that's such a consistent thing no matter who they play. So I think it's interesting, like you said, to play a team like Green Forest, another team that can contend for a state title, really does give you those types of checks and balances to just how good they really are.
For sure. And with that matchup, I love that Eagles Landing was able to win that one because it's a different kind of team, right? Eagles Landing is more guard oriented, and obviously Green Forest has 2 7-footers. So for Eagles Landing to go in and beat size, real talented size. Guy Chole's going to Mississippi State, DK Manuel's going to Georgia State. That says a lot about this team. They can adapt. They can play against different kinds of teams. So that was really impressive.
Yeah, no doubt. What else is impressive is Coach John Schulman at Alabama Huntsville's ability to recruit the right kind of guy for his system. And you've got a guy on your list that you really like for them. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, Preston Parker. He was one of the summer stock risers here in Georgia. Yeah. And he, last year Sequoia made it to the Final Four in 6A, and they were built on, a big three of senior leaders, right? Preston Parker was a junior on that team. So now it was kind of like, okay, well, what's Sequoia going to look like? How good are they going to be? Are they going to be able to, get back to the state playoffs after losing so much? And yeah, they look like a team that could get back to that point because Preston Parker has taken that step up, and he's joining the Alabama Huntsville team next year when he goes over there. And he had 21 points to lead them to a win over St. Francis at the Peach Ball Classic on Saturday. He was fantastic. In the pressure moments, the game was tied. He was at the free throw line with, just mere seconds left on the clock. I can't remember how much time exactly. And he sank both those free throws and kind of, really gave Sequoia the edge in a really hard-fought win. He's been really good for them all season long. Big guard, shoots it, passes it, does everything you need.
I love it. UAH is a program that we see all the time at our stuff, and so it's always good to see those guys get a player that kind of fits who they're all about. We talked about these guys earlier, Mount Pisgah, but also them and Mount Bethel picked up some big wins over the weekend. And as again, we've talked about Class A D1, right? This restructuring or rebranding, if you will. How dangerous are those two teams as we get closer to the postseason in Georgia?
This is one of the more fascinating, developments in Georgia. It's gonna take a second to get this out because there's a lot that goes into it. Region 6A, A Division 1. That region specifically is ridiculous. You got Mount Bethel, Mount Pisgah, two of the teams operating at the top. You have Mount Vernon, and then you have Kings Ridge, who's in the final or who made it to the championship game last year in A Private. And all of those 4 teams are operating as A Division 1's, best teams. So sure. The fact that these 2 teams are still picking up wins while their, region slate's about to pick up and get really, really daunting is really impressive. And if you win, if they lose a game or 2, it's not going to be that big of a deal because all the teams they're going up against are, really, they're all Final Four contenders, really, at the end of the day. So the fact that these 2 teams picked up big wins and continue to have great seasons is really impressive. And I'm really fascinated to see how Region 6A, A Division 1 plays out at the end of the day.
I could just see, like, as we put our all-state teams together, like how much space that you can't even get that on in a tweet. That's too many characters, I think, for one tweet. So.
I know. I'm gonna have to get creative with that one. Maybe I'll just the region of doom in A Division 1.
I mean, even the banners that you've got to hang from the rafters. I mean, that's too much. It's too wordy. You got to read. I like the region.
Yeah, they're gonna need to make. They're gonna instead of getting those banners that kind of go vertically, they're gonna need to get a horizontal one.
Region of Doom. I like that. Is that what you call it?
That's what I'm calling it. Yeah, absolutely. If you have any region with 4 of the top teams in that classification in there, yeah, it's a region of doom to me.
Region of Doom. I like that. It's catchy. It's catchy. Speaking of St. Francis, they've got a guy, 2025 guard that caught your eye.
Yeah, Reynolds Escher at the Peach Ball Classic against Sequoia in that game, that aforementioned game. He had 29 points, and he was super impressive with his aggressive attack of the rim. Right. He kind of plays with a little crafty, a little shifty style, and he really gets downhill and puts pressure on defenses, gets to the free throw line, creatively finishes at the rim and all of that. So I think, his performance was really impressive. It's one of the ones that's going to stick with me moving forward from the weekend. And I think he's a 2025 guy that people need to get their eyes on, kind of really familiarize themselves with if they haven't already. He shined at our elite preview camp in the fall.
Okay.
Too, so, yeah.
We call him a Doomster. Is he a Doomster?
Doomster, yeah, he's in that region of Doom. St. Francis is part of that 6A region, 6A Division 1. So yeah, he is part of that gauntlet.
He's a Doomster. I like it.
He is.
Forever. I think we gotta make some tea. We gotta get some merch going for the region of Doom.
Honestly, it's tough, man.
Set up, man. We need to call our merchandiser and tell him to get him going.
For
All
real.
right, so we got a lot of mileage. It looks like I'm looking at your schedule ahead. And I'm like, how? Okay, let's run through it. How many gas pumps are you going to hit up? Jeez,
I'm gonna hit a few. So this is gonna be a fun week for me. I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm not going to as many high school games this week. So before I get into it, the background is that I have a buddy that lives in Jacksonville who I used to go on like baseball road trips with, right? We flew out to California, hit all the California ballparks, then went into Arizona, went to Phoenix, hit that ballpark. We went up to Toronto, we drove up to Toronto and then drove down the East Coast, hit all the baseball parks down the East Coast.
Oh, that's sick.
We wanted to do something similar with basketball. He's a North Florida graduate, so we were like, okay, well, we need to go to a North Florida game. And then he's been really getting into the Magic. So it's like, all right, so let's find a weekend where we can go to a North Florida game and then go to a Magic game back to back. So on Thursday, we're going to go see North Florida play Queens. And then on Friday, we're going to go see the Magic play the Pelicans. And then Saturday, I'm going to leave Jacksonville early and get back to Atlanta for the Nike Elite High School event going on at Pace Academy. And in that one, you got Pebblebrook versus Norcross. You got Milton versus Pace. And then to keep the Florida tradition going, or the Florida theme going of the weekend, you've got McEachern versus Oak Ridge out of the Orlando area.
Okay, I love it on several things, and there's a lot to dissect here. So I don't know where to begin. So you don't realize this, but you got to understand how HoopSeen centric your road is. Queens and North Florida. North Florida, Coach Matt Driscoll's probably been to more HoopSeen events.
They're always at. I see them so much over during live periods. North Florida is always there.
Totally agree. Grant Leonard, the head coach at Queens, I've known him forever, and the All-Americans that they've had, we've had so many conversations offline. I'm like, that guy's gonna be an All-American, and we're right. So the fact that they're playing each other, which by the way, Queens I think has a chance to be an absolute powerhouse in that conference. We ran our
transition to D1 has been good. Like it's been seamless. They've been great.
Well, their campus is awesome. We ran an elite preview at their school probably 4 or 5 years ago. Really one of my more favorite days. We were on the road for the elite preview. The Pelicans are loaded with HoopSeen guys. Okay, obviously Zion, Brandon Ingram. Love to see that. And then of course getting back in Oak Ridge, Coach Steve Reese. Keeping the Florida tradition alive as a stalwart at our events in the elite season with Gibbons and Tip-Off and some of our other stuff. That's the South. And, of course, our local team. So I love the fact that there's all these HoopSeen connections to all the guys that you're going to see. Number two, we need to sell sponsorship. So if anybody that works for a Power 5, a Fortune 500 company that wants to sponsor the HoopSeen tour bus, my email is jyoung@hoopseen.com. I'm all ears because we've got to put this together. My friends, Rob Doster, who runs Field the 68 in Troy. Oh, man, I'm totally forgetting, Troy, your last name. Forgive me, man. They had a website, a blog years and years ago called Balling is a Habit. They did literally a road trip across the country to go to all these places. And they went to Logan, Utah, to Utah State, and fell in love with Wild Bill. And all these, I think they went to Wyoming, all these places. I'm like, that would be so fun. So you and your buddy, what's your friend's name?
Cronin, Mike Cronin. He's a teacher down in Jacksonville.
Okay, shout out Mr. Cronin, teacher, that you guys are getting that Florida run. So we want to extend that and do that even more. Probably when we go to.
Seriously, man, I want to at some point put together maybe next year put together a high school road trip where I just kind of hit different areas, go to Indiana. Obviously, you got to go to Indiana for high school basketball. Make my way out to Texas somehow. All that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's something that I really do want to hit and have that one just be specifically high school events, going to some of the best high schools in whatever states, going to some of the best high school events in these states and all that.
I not because I'm a full-time West Coaster again, is that I feel like I'm really leaning into that lifestyle where I see so many sprinter vans that are converted into these traveling like, machines with all these,
Yeah.
built-in beds. Like, I'm really into it. Like, I really think that's something
Oh,
that
me too. I think that'd be great. I would love to. Let's get a HoopSeen one.
That might need to have the HoopSeen ball on the side as we make this trip all over the place. What is gas, by the way, back east in the South? How much is it per gallon?
Not expensive. My dad lives in San Diego, and whenever I kind of go out there, I'm like astonished by how much gas is. It's like in the low threes, I think, something like that. I can't remember. Like, maybe like 340 or something like that. Like, it's really not that bad. Out in San Diego last time I was there, it was like upwards of $6, and it was like, no, I'm good. Like, I'll walk.
Yeah, it's bananas. Well, good. At least you can keep it somewhat economical on your trip down through Florida. So, man, the shot clock, we went long today. I'm not mad at it. So if you made it this far, we appreciate you getting here. We're going to do it again. We do it every single week right here on HoopSeen TV. So, again, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Go hit that bell up there in the corner so you can see that. And anytime we upload a video, you get notified right away, let you know that it's live and it's on the site. And so we've had a lot of subscribers join the channel. So if this is your first time here or your second time here, we appreciate you sticking around and staying all the way through. So, Josh, man, get some rest. You got a long week ahead. I'm excited for you, and so much more good ball. And again, that Nike Elite event at Pace is going to be really, really good. Some good matchups to keep eyes on. So
it's the Hogwarts of hoops over there at Pace.
It definitely is. The Region of Doom. Got to keep those guys in mind too. So anyways, we'll see you guys next week right here on the Shot Clock.